Friends, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to begin the funeral services for Nancy Pearlstein Rosman in just a few moments. For those of you who are here in the chapel, we would ask and invite you to find your seats shortly. We thank those of you who are joining us online via the live stream. We thank you for your support of the family at this very challenging time. If you have a cell phone or a pager, I would ask and invite you to turn it off or place it in the silent mode. And officiating today's services will be Rabbi Barry Schechter from Congregation Kol Emeth in Skokie.
Mizmor David, Adonai, mi Yaakov yolecha, mi yishkon behar kodechecha, holech tamim, ufoel et tzedek, v'dover emet bilvavo, lo ragal leshono, lo asa l'reyehu ra, v'cherepa lo nasa al kerovo. Nivze b'nav nimas v'et yirei Adonai echabed, nishpat v'ara, v'lo yamir, kaspo lo natan b'neshech, v'shochad al nakilo lakach, oseyele lo yimot li'olam. God, who may abide in your house, who may dwell in your holy mountain, those who are upright, who do justly, who speak the truth within their hearts, who do not slander others, or wrong them, or bring shame upon them, who give their word and come what may do not retract, who do not exploit others. Those who live in this way shall never be shaken. Dear friends, we're here for a sad and difficult occasion to say goodbye, which is always difficult, but especially in these circumstances, to say goodbye, which is one of the most difficult things we can ever do. But we're also here to pay tribute and to honor the memory, and even if possible, to celebrate the life of Nancy, the daughter of Sarah and Bernard, Nechama bat Sarah Bernard, who's gone to her eternal rest much too early, and leaves behind a family and many, many friends who loved her very, very dearly. First of all, her husband, her life's partner, Dr. Joseph Rosman. They were married for 40 years. The children, Aaron, Adam, Rebecca, and Emily. Her siblings, her sister Donna and her Alfred. Late brother Robert, or Bobby, and his Jean, who is with us here, and the sisters, brothers-in-law, Dr. Robert, or Bob, and his Sharon, and William, or Bill, and Michael, and Daniel, and his Tricia. And there are friends, lifelong friends, Edith and Susie, literally lifelong friends. And we're going to hear first from the family. So I'm going to call up Donna to speak to us first about her brother.
Do I have to wear my mask?
No, you don't have to. When I sing, it makes my
I want to thank everyone for coming to honor my sister Nancy. Others are going to come up to talk to you about Nancy's inherent kindness and generosity. However, I want to talk to you about the one thing that was most important to her: family. Nancy was blessed with a husband that absolutely is a mensch, and 4 devoted, altruistic, and kind children: Aaron, Adam, Rebecca, and Emily, as well as lifelong friends that are like sisters to us: Susie, Edith, and Audrey. Our shared memories of Nancy will forever be treasured. Growing up, every Friday night, we went to our Bubbies and Zadies for Shabbat dinner. Often, my Uncle Joey and Aunt Felice and their children, Dean and Randy, were also there, as well as a few of our many aunts and uncles. We did this weekly throughout my childhood until my Zadie passed away when I was in my first year of college. As you can imagine, my Bubby was a wonderful cook. We always had appetizers like chopped liver or chopped eggs, chicken soup, and of course, challah with schmaltz on top of it. Now, I'm mortified to think about all those unhealthy foods we ate. But at that time, those things never entered our minds. Although we didn't realize it then, these gatherings were about family, not food. Throughout the years, during the same time, our mom always had relatives over for not only the holidays, just to get together. This was not unusual for us. It was just normal to regularly spend time with our extended family and friends. It didn't have to do with the homemade food like my Bubby used to make. It was just the occasion of spending time with family that was important. Growing up in this way made a lasting impression on Nancy. She continued this tradition of family after she was married and had children. Frequently, she'd have more than 35 people at her house for a family meal, which would typically include family, extended family, friends, and even friends of friends. Anyone who's ever eaten a meal at Nancy's knows that it was not just a meal, but a feast. Nancy got great pleasure out of preparing great quantities of delicious food for her guests and truly being together and engaging in many conversations. More recently, Nancy often mentioned to me how much she missed those family members that were no longer with us. Nancy also took special joy in choosing special gifts for the family. She would browse many online stores, visit craft shows throughout the region, and really managed to find something truly personal and meaningful. Even when she was ill, she never forgot a birthday or a special occasion. Our brother Bobby died a little more than 2 years ago, which affected everyone, but especially Nancy. They spoke every day, sometimes more than once a day. Shortly after that, COVID arrived at our shores, and we were limited on what we could do or who we could see. The isolation of these last 2 years was very hard for Nancy. She looked forward to again having a house full of people and the joy of togetherness. At Bobby's funeral, Nancy ended her remarks by hoping that they would see each other again. I know that they are together now, along with our mom, dad, and other loved ones. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Donna, for those lovely words. And now we're going to hear from Sharon.
Good morning, everyone. I wasn't originally going to speak this morning because I didn't think that I would get through it. And I still don't think I will, but I'm going to try. So, I met Nancy 40 years ago, not long after Bob and I got married. And Joe called me to tell me about Nancy, and we had a really nice conversation. And he told me what a special person she was and how smart she was and how crazy about her, and he knew I would love her too. And I did from the first day I met her. And I stood up at their wedding, and it was such a beautiful, happy day. And I was so proud to be able to stand up. And shortly after they came back from their honeymoon, Nancy called me on the phone, and she said how happy she was. And she's never been as happy as she ever was in her whole life. And she was so thrilled to be married to Joe, and how much she loved him. And I was so happy for both of them. And they just were the sweetest couple. At all of our times when we would go back and forth to each other's homes for events and family occasions, and you would always see Nancy and Joe together, and they would always be touching each other and massaging each other, and just showing such sweet, demonstrations of their love and affection for each other. And that was just always so lovely to see, even after they were married so many years. And one thing that I want to share with you that Nancy did for me is when I was pregnant with Molly, I had to be on bed rest for 3 months, total bed rest. And Nancy called me every day and got me through it. She called me every single day and was my cheerleader. And she said, "You're going to get through this, I promise. You'll be fine, the baby will be fine, and I'm here for you." And she was. She always was here for me. And I loved her. And I'm going to miss her so much. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Sharon. And now we're going to hear from Audrey. Audrey, who is one of the three, Audrey, Edie, and Susan, and you're speaking for yourself and them.
Right.
Thank you.
So this was written by my sister Edith. I'll read this one first, then I'll read Susie's. I didn't write one. There is not another person in the world who could measure up to Nancy. I have known Nancy ever since she was born. Her family lived above us on the second floor at 3457 West Monroe Street in Chicago. She was the youngest of 3 children born to Sarah and Bernie Pearlstein. Donna was the oldest, followed by Bobby, and then the baby, Nancy. Being the baby, Donna was frequently asked to babysit Nancy and often had to have her tag along with us, which she loved as much as Donna hated. Fortunately, after becoming adults, the relationship became much closer knit and remained so despite the distances between them. When I think of Nancy and what a wonderful friend she was, all kinds of things remind me of her kindness, generosity, sensitivity, caring, and love. She was the type of person who enjoyed life to its fullest and sought more and more adventures. Traveling was her hobby, and she especially loved planning for the trips, almost more than the trips themselves. She hated sitting in one place too long unless it was our newest activity, mahjong. We got together at least twice a week at one of the players' houses where we used the game as a reason to have snacks, which developed into meals, and we'd laugh about using mahjong as an excuse to eat. One of her favorite phrases was, "When I become president, I'd be in charge and make changes." She liked to be in control at all times and try to make things better for everyone. All you'd have to do is mention a problem you were having, and she'd be fast as a whip researching information to help you find an answer to that problem. Nothing was ever too much of an inconvenience for her when it came to her friends and family. She loved to bake and cook and play cards with our poker group. She'd have a banquet laid out on the table and made sure there was some favorite dish for everyone. She certainly was a fabulous hostess. We'd laugh as she brought out one dish after another until no room was left on the table. Another of her favorite activities would be to play bingo, no matter how far the drive. Joe would willingly take her wherever the bingo destination was. And let's not forget Las Vegas, where her partners in crime included Susie, Tracy, and Donna, who enthusiastically joined her a couple times a year. She always talked about her family and the joy that they brought her. Aaron, Adam, Rebecca, and Emily were lucky to have such a wonderful mother who did everything in her power to make them happy. Then there was her husband, Joe, who was as devoted to her as she was to him. What wonderful memories Joe will have reliving all their good times and celebrations. Nancy and I discussed death over the years, and she had mentioned that she always felt as if her parents and brother were watching over her. There are some who bring a light so great to the world that even after they are gone, the light remains. I loved you like a sister and will miss you. That was from Edith. This is from Susie. When a close friend unexpectedly leaves us, a piece of our heart is forever broken. Being an only child, Nancy was more like a sister to me than a friend. If I could describe my dear friend and boil it down to one word, it would be that her greatest gift was kindness. Kindness and love for family, kindness and generosity to friends and strangers, and kindness and affection to all varieties of animals. Kindness was a special trait of my forever friend Nancy. Nancy had so many other wonderful qualities, too numerous to list them. She was a remarkable cook and baker, which we all witnessed at her banquet dinners, which I miss already. She was the most articulate writer I ever knew. I loved our conversations about politics, although they were X-rated sometimes, especially about Trump. Nancy was a patient listener and always gave me sound, non-judgmental advice. She was extremely resourceful and could tell you where to buy something and how much to pay for it. She planned most of our trips together and all the things to see, places to eat, and concerts to go to. She was an excellent She was an excellent defensive player in mahjong. She would ruin a good hand so no one else could win. She also was a strategic poker player. Red-black was her favorite game. Nancy surprised me so many times with concert tickets she had won to my favorite singers, Billy Joel, Elton John, Andrea Bocelli. One day I came home and there was an iMac computer on my doorstep. She even had my kids on her list of winners. It was always about doing things for others. Her devotion to her mom, her husband Joe, and her children knew no bounds. I knew Nancy for 68 years, yes, since she was born. It went by in a flash, and my heart is broken. I'd like to end with a poem. It's called Until We Meet Again. Those special memories of you will always bring a smile. If I could have you back for just a little while, then we could sit and talk again, just like we used to do. You always meant so very much, and always will, too. The fact that you're no longer here will always cause me pain, but you're forever in my heart until we meet again.
Thank you, Audrey and Edie and Susan. And now Adam and Rebecca will come up together.
My mom was an amazing and inquisitive writer, and she was an equally engaging orator. I'm not a great speaker, especially in moments like this, but I have some things I'd like to share. I don't think I can share them myself, but my brother is going to say what I wrote for me.
Hello, thank you all for coming. So I'm reading this on behalf of my sister, Rebecca. I'm Rebecca Rosman, one of Nancy's daughters. My mom was an amazing inquisitive writer. Oh, good. Sorry. I've lived abroad for about 10 years now. but my mom and I talk on the phone nearly every day, sometimes multiple times a day. Usually, these were short phone calls. She wanted to know what radio stories I was working on, how I was spending my time with my friends, and what I was eating. Particularly when my eating adventures involved a nice piece of milk chocolate, warm croissants, or a good cut of steak. Sometimes she would send me money and say, go have a nice meal with a friend and tell me about it. Make sure you tell me about it. That was an obligation. One of the last times we talked on the phone was a few days before Thanksgiving. I was making her chicken soup recipe. Turned out she was doing the same thing. She asked about my Thanksgiving plans. We talked about how Thanksgiving was a favorite holiday for both of us, mostly because it meant time with family. We talked about how we wished we could be together. Living in Paris, my mom constantly worried about how far away I was from her and the rest of our family. I always told her I was so lucky to have found a great community of friends I could rely on for support. She wanted to hear every detail about each one of them. If one of those friends was a boy, she'd ask for even more details. She worried about a lot of my friends the same way she worried about me. When I told her my friend Federica was taking a job in the Central African Republic, she said, but does she have to? When my friend Jordan was working ER shifts during the first wave of COVID, she made sure I passed on the message for him to take extra care. My mom used to tell me that she was always tentative when it came to friendships. But once she was in, she was truly in. The best friendships, she said, are the oldest ones. I'm thinking of Susie and Edith, her friends of more than 60 years. Audrey, Bertha, Marilyn, Ellen, Lauren. Your relationships meant the world to her. It means the world to me that I was able to grow up witnessing what it truly means to be a loyal and reliable friend. My mom was born in 1953 on the west side of Chicago, as the youngest of 3 kids. She adored her siblings Bobby and Donna. Every Saturday morning, they would huddle together under a homemade fort and watch cartoons. She didn't have a lot of money, but they always found a way to have adventures. Those adventures would often go late into the night until my grandma Sarah would call out from the front door, Donna, Bobby, Nancy. As she got older, her adventures extended well beyond the west side. There was her Euro trip in the 70s, which may have involved a bit too many beer samples in the Heineken factory in Amsterdam. Trips to Mexico, Paris, London, all over Israel and Hawaii. As much as she loved traveling, she never wanted to be away for too long. Chicago, she said, is always going to be my home. I always leaned on my mom's shoulder for her wisdom, sound judgment, and compassion. Her advice was always nuanced, and she constantly challenged her friends to think beyond their own frame of mind. I have often struggled to match her level of saintliness, but I've worked hard to surround myself with people who emulate her qualities. Many have reached out over the past few days with your condolences. Among these thoughts, I was told that when a parent dies, they never really go away. They live on inside you and are always with you. That line has given me a lot of comfort. Aaron, Adam, and Emily, I hope this gives you comfort too. I love you all. We will all continue to take care of each other. My mom was unsure of the afterlife, but she always remained hopeful. Shortly after my grandma died in 2016, we were sitting in a car when a cardinal pulled up next to her window. Do you think it could be Grandma, she asked. I said yes, but mostly out of comfort. Yesterday, I was walking across our front lawn when I saw 2 cardinals fly into a tree. Now, like my mom, I also tend to be skeptical about what happens when we die, but I too promise to remain hopeful.
Thank you, Rebecca and Adam. And now we're going to hear from Joe.
Thank you for coming. This is the most difficult day of my life and the most difficult speech I will ever give. I have known Nancy for 50 years and have been married to her for 40 years. I met her in September 1971 during New Student Week in Urbana. Just by coincidence, I was walking down the hall in the basement of the Florida Avenue Residence Hall by a pop machine, and she was walking with her new roommate. The two of them, I could tell she was Jewish, and so I started talking to her. I was smitten by her beauty. I called her a few days later to ask to see her again, and we started to date. A few weeks later, while we were walking somewhere, she read me from an essay she was writing. I think it had something to do with feminism. And I was struck by how articulate she was, how the sentences flowed, how every sentence flowed into the next. And I thought, wow, not only is she pretty, but she's smart. We continued to date that year, but I think she was getting tired of me, and I did not see her for a while. But we resumed dating several years later after I met her again by coincidence in Ann Arbor, where she was a graduate student in social work. We started to date again, but she had a one-date-a-week quota. I was never sure why. She was not dating anybody else, but I was persistent and kept asking to see her. This went on for a few years until about 1980. She let me know we could have 2 dates a week. I thought 1 date a week might mean she likes me, but 2 dates a week might mean that she loves me. This went on for several months until finally she told me her Uncle Joey wanted to know what my intentions were. I must confess that I had some, quote, men in their 20s, unquote, commitment issues. It didn't make me nervous, but in my heart, I knew I would never find anyone who had her combination of beauty, intelligence, her impressive ability to judge character, and to always know the right thing to do in any situation. And so we were married in April of 1981. When people marry, they sometimes find out unpleasant surprises about their spouse, but with Nancy, it was the opposite. I had no idea she was a good cook. And in 40 years, Nancy never made a meal I did not like. As Donna said, those who have been to our house for Passover or Rosh Hashanah know what a family extravaganza she put on, feeding 35 to 40 people sometimes. Everything she made surpassed anything you can find in a restaurant. She would put her literary talents to use by entering contests. And during the Shiva, I will tell you the amazing stories of things and prizes that she won. She had excellent financial judgment and was a tough negotiator on everything from car buying to home repair to travel arrangements. Many of you know that I am a pulmonary critical care physician, and often I faced thorny ethical issues in the intensive care unit, but I could always rely on her judgment and insight about what to do. Her children knew that when they needed an opinion on work, friends, finance, she could give a thoughtful and nuanced opinion that they would get from few others. Her kindness to all, both family and people she knew, was well known by all. Her care for animals, both pets and others, convinced me that I had married the right girl. This year, her health began to fail. Our loss is immense. She is irreplaceable. I would like to conclude by quoting from the well-known verse from the book of Proverbs, Esha Chayil. She is clothed in strength and glory and is joyful to the last day. She speaks with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. She watches over the ways of her family and does not eat the bread of laziness. Her children rise to praise her, and her husband applauds her. Many women have achieved great things, but you have surpassed them all. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe, and thank all of you for these beautiful tributes. I met with the family, I met with you yesterday, and heard many wonderful things about Nancy. And listening today, Donna, where's Donna? Donna, you started out with this beautiful picture of going to your grandparents on Friday night and having those wonderful health foods, challah with schmaltz. These, ladies and gentlemen, were the great days before that terrible day with the invention of something called cholesterol. So it touched my heart because we remember those wonderful days when we could eat whatever we liked. And food, you know, has played a large part in this. You've heard about this. When I was with the family yesterday, I have to tell you, it was actually a wonderful experience just being with you, even though we were talking about an event that is very sad, but a person, a human being, a Jewish woman who is so wonderful. And as often happens, it doesn't always happen. Sometimes I sit with people and it's awkward because they have nothing to say. I needn't tell you that was not the case last night. There was an avalanche, a mountain of things that came flying at me, and I had to beg people, please slow down. I'm trying to get all of this down. And it was all wonderful. It was all lovely. It was all your experience of the different facets of a most remarkable lady. There's a combination. You talked about this, about how articulate she was, how she was able to express things wonderfully, both in speaking and in writing, how you said it flowed from one sentence to the next, and how this showed a remarkable mind, an intelligence, a skill, a brain. But in addition to that, there was the character that you talked about that was nourished by your early experience of the family. There's another example to be nostalgic, because at one time we had families, and I mean this was common, I don't mean just in yours, there were families and there were neighborhoods and people knew each other, and you could walk into someone else's home without a prior appointment. And in fact, this was the case with her. And I think, who was it when you married Gabriel? Help me. Molly, you said that Gabriel said to you, because you continued this wonderful practice, and Gabriel said to you, right, you can't just go in without. You said, oh yes, you can. And so you introduced into what families used to be like and what they should be like. And alas, in too many cases are not like, but they were in this family. You know, we're told in the Chumash, in Bereshit, in Genesis, which we're reading at the moment, that Abraham, our ancestor, the first Jew, it doesn't say this in the Torah, but it does say this in the commentaries, that he had, in the desert, in the wilderness, he had a tent, and he had a door on every side which was open, because he didn't want to miss any passers-by. He wanted everyone to come in. So in that sense, she was the inheritor. She is the heir to our ancestor, the first Jewish man, the first Jewish person, who welcomed everyone and made everyone feel good. But as I say, it wasn't just the heart. It wasn't just the heart, which is like this. It was the mind. It was the brain, the skill. So that if she wanted to help someone, if she wanted to encourage someone, she had not only the wish, but she had the instrument, the wit, the brain, the mind, to do it, to find. You say, someone has a problem, and she could do the research and find out really how to solve this problem. And you've heard it. I heard it from all of you in 100 different ways. You heard it today about someone who's pregnant and frightened, and how she's there all the time and lifting the spirits. We all need that, by the way. We all need that, however self-possessed and independent we think we are. We need someone to be, the word that was used here again today, a cheerleader. And she was just that. Her kindness, you gave me a few examples. I can tell you, from everything you've told me, these are just a fragment, a fraction of the examples. Like you saw she had a can, I think, when you first met her, right? And you said, what is that? What is that, a can? Who carries a can in her purse? It's dog food. I see he opened his mouth there. It's dog food. Yeah, take it easy. It's dog food. You'll eat later. It's dog food. Why? In case there's a dog we pass who needs food. Emily, where's Emily? Emily, she was driving you, right? She was driving you somewhere. You had to be there. She saw a blind man on the street, with a cane. Stopped the car. Gave him a ride. You got to your destination eventually. When she was visiting the parents of a friend in the nursing home, there was an old man sitting there. He had no one. It's terrible. Someone who has no one, God help us. It's awful. Next time she came, she brought him a cake. And he lit up with a great smile. This man who had no one, and someone, a complete stranger, Nancy, sees he has no one. She took care of so many. She took care of her mother, of her parents, and all. She took care of really just about everyone. In taking care of her mother, there was a Polish caregiver, right, who had a grandchild. She helped the grandchild. She wrote things for. She did all kinds of things for. But this is a sample. This is not the totality. This is the person. This is the character. This is the human being. Joe, when you talked, when you spoke to me, the first thing you told me was about how you met her, and we heard a little bit of it. And as you talked about the reluctance and the getting together and getting apart and getting together and getting apart. I always think when I hear something like that, that is, to use the Yiddish word that many of you know, and those of you who don't, I will try to explain it, bashert. Bashert means it's fated, it's destined, it was written, it was intended. Because it took you a few years, but you zigzagged to what was and had been intended, and what the next 40 years proved was intended. Even at the time you didn't know it, right? At the time you were upset, or she was, there was reluctance. This thing doesn't go in a straight line, but it gets there. It gets there in the end. You told me about how she loved animals. I think in college she actually, so this was at in Urbana. There was a dog, Jonah, right? A collie mix. And I think was this in the dorm? Was this in the dorm? Sorry? It's not. I say it quietly because there may be representatives of the university here, because this is a complete violation. So I'll say it quietly. She snuck the dog into the dorm. No, she loved animals. And later you said you had cats that were always leaving. But it came back. You had one of them, Yoshi, right? Came back after 11 days. After 11 days, a cat returns. That may be some kind of record. I'm not sure. And about her cooking, one of you told me, sometimes people get nervous about having a meal, Rosh Hashanah or Pesach, Passover for 2, 3, 4, 5 people. There's 35 people. And the other thing you told me was that you bring out dish after dish, these marvelous foods, and you'd be finished, you'd be full. You'd not just be full, you'd be bloated. And another meal would come in. I don't know if you exploded as you left the place, but if you did, you exploded with pleasure as well as with volume. You heard about her skill in winning competitions and getting the prizes to go to other people. I'll just mention a few things that were won. I'm surprised these companies didn't go bankrupt. Big TVs, scooters for the nieces, SeaWorld, Florida, Hawaii, Switzerland. I think Bobby and Jean went to Israel. There was a competition to make a dessert, but it had to be by a young child. So she made something, she said, Adam, who was at the advanced age of 5, that he had made it. What was it, chocolate-covered banana or something like that? Although she detested fruit, but to win a competition, that was kosher. There's much more. There's much more. Also, oh yes, this word that was used, curiosity, adventure, excitement. When we're children, everything is new, everything is exciting. You know, a healthy child, I mean someone healthy in body and mind, doesn't get bored because everything's new and interesting. The colors, the sounds, right? When we're children. As we grow up, we get more blasé. We don't have this excitement. She had this kind of excitement, this wonderful excitement that we have as children that is often lost. She made people feel welcome. I know, Gabriel, when you joined the family, everyone was nice to you, but she made a point of coming over to you and really making you feel at home. And there are more and more and more examples of this. You should tell these stories. It is impossible to recount them all at an occasion such as this. But here you have this lady with wit and ability and love and loyalty and friendship, all these moral qualities of character matched by a wonderful mind, a wonderful brain that can be used for the good to help people and to show love and family. And this is a legacy, this is an inheritance that she leaves to you, much more important than property or financial assets. You have to try and go on. I know you were saying, how can we do it? Do whatever you can. Do whatever you can. Imagine her giving you advice about what to do. Imagine it. Sometimes the imagination is quite powerful. Try to take a little bit of her life and incorporate it into your own. Won't always work, but sometimes it will. Sometimes you will be able to encourage yourself through thinking of her when things are down and things are difficult. You were blessed to have her. It's so sad that she was taken from you. I wish there were words in me to comfort you at this time. But as time goes on, the memories, the beautiful memories, the joyful memories will grow, and the sadness will recede. It doesn't go away completely, of course. She was a bracha. She was a blessing. Of her I say, Tehei nashmata tzurura b'tzurah chayim. May her soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. And to her I say, Nancy, Lechi b'shalom, geh in Frieden, go in peace, aber lech in Gan Eden. May your repose be in paradise. You'll never be forgotten. You'll always be remembered in love by those who knew you and loved you, those whom you knew loved. Amen. These little booklets, if you open them on the top, on the left, the 23rd Psalm, please read with me. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Could I ask you please to stand if you can? If it's difficult for you to stand, you can certainly stay seated. And will those of you wearing the ribbons, if you could come together, please. Hail Male Rachamim, Shachein Bam Ramim, Ametei menucha nechona tachat kanefei ashira b'mahalot kedoshim utorim k'zohar arakia masirim et nishmat Nechama bat Sarah Bened Shalecha Liolama Bavur Shanach Nadrim Nitzdaka Biad Askarat Nishmata Began Eden Tehei Menuchata Lachein balarachamim Yastireu b'seitek anafal yolamim Yitzeror b'yitzorachem et nishmata Adonai hu nachalata V'tanua b'shalom al mishkava V'nomar Amen. Passionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure who shine as the brightness of the firmament unto the soul of Nancy Pearlstein Rosman, the daughter of Sarah and Bernard, who has entered eternity and in whose memory we offer charity. May her repose be in paradise. God of mercy, let her find refuge in your eternal presence, and let her soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is her inheritance. May she rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. You may be seated.
Friends, this concludes the services here at the chapel. The interment and burial services will continue at Shalom Memorial Park in Arlington Heights. For those of you traveling with us to the cemetery and the funeral procession, please keep the following safety precautions in mind. Please make sure that your bright headlights and your four-way hazard flashers are on at all times. Please be sure to obtain an orange funeral safety sticker for your windshield, and we will be providing several of the cars throughout the procession with a magnetic orange flag to be placed again on top of your car. Please travel as close as safety permits to the car in front of you to avoid any gaps in the procession. For your own safety and security, I would suggest not speaking or texting while driving to the cemetery in the procession. As we make our way through the various intersections from here to the cemetery, if the car in front of you goes through the intersection, please do proceed with caution, but please do make every attempt to go through that intersection, and you may feel free to use your horn liberally as we make our way through those intersections. The family will be together at the Sharon and Bob Rosman residence, and it's requested that only fully vaccinated guests are welcome to attend the Shiva, and that will be today from 1:30 until 4, and resuming Saturday and Sunday from 5 until 9 p.m. And at the residence, masks will be required at all times unless you're going to be actively engaged in eating or drinking. And we thank you for your cooperation in that matter. Finally, the family has requested that any memorial contributions in Nancy's memory to either the Anti-Cruelty Society or the American Heart Association. And all of that information is available on the service folder that you should have received when you came into the chapel. And if you did not receive it when you came in, we do have it for you as you leave. And for those of you joining us online, all of that information regarding Shiva and the memorial contributions is also available on our website. The following family members will be serving as pallbearers: Sharon and Donna, Aaron, Adam, Rebecca, and Emily. And at this time, we would ask everyone to please rise and stand in place as we escort the casket, the rabbi, and the family from the chapel. Pallbearers will ask you to